dear children. Today is Thursday and this is 22nd of July 2021, and this video I have come with is about a new lesson. We are going to begin lesson number 2 from today, and it is supply, law of supply and determinants of supply, as you can see at the top there. Okay, the new chapter number 2, page number 39 is given on page number 39. Topic is supply, law of supply and determinants of supply. Okay, before we begin this lesson, let me tell you that we have not completed chapter number 1. Only half of the portion we have completed. Okay, chapter number 1 was about demand, law of demand and determinants of demand. So instead of supply, it was demand. All those topics and all those meaning determinants that we learned about the demand, we are going to learn the same topic but for supply. And once we complete as much topics for demand as we have completed, then we will move on to demand back to chapter number 1. Okay, so simultaneously we will discuss so that it will be easy for you to understand. You can comparatively understand. Okay, we learn about the law of demand. Similarly, we learn about the law of supply. We learn about what is demand. We learn about supply. Okay, we learn about the individual. We learn about the schedule, demand schedule. Here we learn about supply schedule. We learn about demand curve. Here we shall learn about supply curve. Okay, so comparatively we will study. It will be quite interesting for you to understand as well as easy for you to understand. So I am going to begin this class now. First of all, I must ask you a question. Who creates demand? Who creates demand? And the answer is consumer. Consumer creates demand. Okay. Similarly, who creates supplies? Who is responsible for creating supply? It is the manufacturers or growers or suppliers. They create supply. We consume, but they, the farmers, they create supply. Manufacturers, they create supply. So remember one thing. As a consumer, when we create demand, we will create more demand if the price is less. If we get the commodities at a cheaper price, then we would like to demand more and more because we benefit. But is it the same thing for supply also? If the price is less, will the supplier will supply more? If the price is less, you are a supplier, you are a manufacturer, you are manufacturing something. When you go to sell it and if you get lesser price for that, then will you supply more? No, because you are losing. If you can sell it for a very high price, that means you are gaining. You are getting more money. You are gaining. Which says that demand and supply are just opposite to each other. But these are two important arms. If there is demand and no supply, you can imagine what will be the situation of the market. And if there is supply and no demand for that, in that case also, you can imagine the situation of the market. So demand and supply has to be together. And there should be demand as much as the supply is, or there should be the supply as much as the demand is. Only then the market will remain stable. Otherwise, if there is no demand but high supply, who will buy? So the prices will have to come down in order to encourage the consumer to buy them. But on the contrary, if there is a high demand but there is no supply, then whatever is the small amount maybe in the supply, it will be precious and its price will go up and the consumer will suffer. Those things we shall discuss later. Let us first know about the meaning of supply. It's given on page number 39 and I will not run through the definition given in the book. The first, supply of a commodity refers to different quantity of a commodity which producers or sellers are willing to produce and offer for sale. Willing to produce and offer for sale at different price during a particular period of time. So in this definition you have certain basic terms. So what is a supply? Supply of a particular commodity refers to the quantity of a commodity which the producers are willing to produce and offer for sale at a particular price at a given point of time. Now in this definition you must have noticed there are three things: willing to produce and offer for sale, and apart from this there is at a particular time, and price is also mentioned. So price and time has to be mentioned when you define supply. You must mention these two things: the price has to be mentioned and the time factor also has to be mentioned. If the price and time is not mentioned in the definition of supply, then your supply is not a supply. It merely remains a wish. It merely remains your wish to do that. Okay, so we learned about the meaning of supply, definition of supply, and we learned that in this definition there must be the price factor and the time factor mentioned in it. And if these two things are not mentioned, then your price or your supply is not a supply in true sense. Now let us move on to the stock and supply. The difference between the stock and supply. What is a stock and what is supply? Stock refers to the total quantity of a commodity available with the producer at a given point of time. So stock refers to the total quantity of a commodity which is available with the producer at a given point of time. At a given point of time, this phrase is very essential. If you don't mention this, then again it is not a stock. Stock when? This year, now, today, last year, when? At a given point of time, this time factor has to be mentioned. So stock is the total quantity of a commodity with the producer at a given point of time. Okay, that's a stock. I am a farmer and I have produced 50 sacks or bags of potato. Okay, I would like to sell them. But is it advisable for me to sell all my produce? I've got 50 bags of potato, but definitely I'd like to keep 10 bags out of it for consumption. No? Throughout the year, it has to feed me. So I'd like to retain 10 bags of the same, so that in future I will require it for my own self-consumption. So I may be willing to sell these 40 bags. These are total produce. 50 bag, 10 bag I am retaining with myself for self-consumption. These 40 bags I want to offer for sale. Now try to understand. I have got 50 bags, but I don't want to sell entire 50 bags. 10 bags I want to retain for my self-consumption. Remaining 40 bags I want to sell. I want to offer for sale at a given point of time and at a price. In this case, the total produce I have with me, total produce, this is called stock at a given point of time. At a given period of time, this is called stock. Total quantity I have is stock. But out of these 50 bags, I want to sell only 40 bags. I want to sell only 40 bags. I don't want to sell all these 50 bags. I want to sell only 40 bags. I want to offer these 40 bags of potato for sale at a given point of time and at a given price. Then this is supply. So these are the main difference between the stock and the supply. The total amount of our commodity that the producer will be having with himself, or the producer has at a given period of time, is the stock. But supply is that part of the total production, that part of the stock which a producer is ready to offer for sale at a given point of time and price. That part is called supply. Stock refers to total production. Out of total production, that part which the producer is offering for sale at a given price and time is called that's called supply. So that is the main difference between the stock and supply. Now dear children, we move on to the next topic, and that is what individual and market supply. Now what is individual supply and market supply? You know, there may be or there never is only one supplier in a market. There may be supplier A, supplier B, supplier C, supplier D. Say supplier A or producer A has produced potato 20 bags. Okay. And if he is ready to supply this 20 bag, when the price is rupees 10 and today time is also mentioned today, and the price 20 rupees per kg. If he is ready to offer his entire production of 20 bags for sale, then that is individual supply, because this is the supply of one producer. This is the supply of one producer. So this is called individual supply. But there is not only one supplier. There may not be only one producer. There may be producer B who may be ready to supply 25 bags, here 30 bags, here 40 bags. Then today itself all of them wants to supply. Today itself all of them would like to supply at the same price, at the price 20 rupees per kg. All of them would like to supply today itself. Then how much will be the total supply? These all will be added. 70, 80, 90, 115 kg, 115 bags of potato will be supplied by these four producers today at the price rupees 20 per kg. Then this is called market supply. This is market supply. This is individual supply. Individual supply is a supply only by one producer at a given price and a period of time. Whereas market supply is the total supply of a particular commodity at a given point of time and at a given price. In another way you can say, market supply is the sum total of all the individual supplies. That means A supplies this much, B supplies this much, C supplies this much, and this is the supply of D. If you add all this, then whatever sum you get is the market supply. So market supply can also be termed as the sum total of all the individual supplies. So that is the definition as well as the difference between the individual and market supply. Dear children, the next topic that we'll have to discuss will be the determinants of demand. But this would be too long topic. This is a too long a topic, and so video itself will be very long. So I am not going to cover that portion today. I am postponing it for the next class. Okay. So at the end of this class, what we have learned is the definition of supply, meaning we have learned the difference between the stock and supply we have discussed, and finally we also learned about the definition and the difference between the individual and market supply. Now it is your duty to turn on your book, and at the end of the lesson you take some homework assignments, short type, question number 1 to 3. This has to be answered. Either you answer it in your exercise copy, or you answer in a rough copy. If you don't have your exercise copy, then you can also answer it in the rough copy, and you can send it to me for correction. I would like to see and give some feedback to you. Alright? So thank you. Watch this video, and if there are doubts, then please do contact me, and keep yourself very safe. Thank you.